Hello, I'm Maria Hall-Brown. Welcome to LA Currents. Well, obviously the pandemic shut down a lot of businesses, including film and television production, which is not really good for a city known for being the entertainment capital of the world. But things are opening up. There's a lot of things happening within the city, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Kevin James, who wears a couple hats. You are the president of the Board of Public Works, as well as the LA Film Liaison.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. It's great to be here.
Thanks. All right, so how do you see the relationship between these two positions? Because on the surface, they seem somewhat diverse, but I know that there's a lot of correlations between the two.
Primarily, the common denominator for us in the city of Los Angeles with on-location filming is the public right-of-way. And so at the Board of Public Works essentially is the city's agent for owning the public right-of-way. So when film shoots want to shoot on location, much of that is in the public right-of-way. And this was a shift that Mayor Garcetti made in his administration. Around 2014, when the mayor started working on the updated version of the film and television tax credit, we knew that we would start to see significant production back in the city of Los Angeles. And working with the film permitting agencies and the studios and the production companies, the mayor knew where some of the hurdles had been, and a lot of it with on-location filming was in the public right-of-way. So what better place to move the film office to than the Board of Public Works, which oversees the public right-of-way. And coincidentally, I was an entertainment lawyer in that role, so it seemed like a good fit. The industry was interested in it, and it's been an addition to the job that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
As well as public right-of-way, I mean, there's also the appearance of the city and how appealing that is to film production companies. Is that something that you consider constantly?
Every day, and for several reasons. One, with the industry, and we have a great working group. It includes the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, IATSE, Teamsters, and studios and production companies, as well as the MPAA. And we work together even when you're putting down green paint for a bike lane. We have an agreed upon shade that was part of a negotiation. So there's quite a collaboration there. And what's interesting to the studios, of course, they care particularly for a period piece. When they need the city to not look as modern as it might otherwise look, because it's from a shot from the 40s or 50s or 70s. So many of our streets are built for that. But we're also changing our built environment, and we're changing our streetscape for much more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. And so that's something that is part of the collaboration as we move to our Vision Zero plan, increasing access to our roads for pedestrians and for bicycles. That's something that the film industry is a partner in that transformation as well.
And is it still as vibrant? And because I know that film production can move all over the world, and based on cost or based on appeal, and we've always thought of ourselves as being the capital. Can we still claim that title?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, in the prior to COVID, we had record permitting in the city of Los Angeles, according to Film LA's data, for the number of shoot days. So we were hitting records here in the city of Los Angeles, indeed around Hollywood, for filming in 2020 before COVID hit. So we are still the entertainment capital of the world. We plan on staying the entertainment capital of the world. But as you mentioned, some 20 years ago or so, one of the things the entertainment industry in the city of Los Angeles learned is that it's a very mobile industry, because other municipalities, other states, other countries created incentive plans to draw those jobs to their locations, and we had to compete, and California really stepped up under Mayor Garcetti's leadership in 2014, and we're now on 3.0 of that original tax incentive plan, the film and television tax credit incentive. So we're now at a 2.0, increased it, extended it permanently, and then extended it 5 more years. And then 3.0, where we start now, has a number of other elements, including improvements to diversity on film shoots, and really both below the line and with the goals that the studios and the unions and the guilds have for above the line too.
There's so much to talk about in this new realm of how production is going to operate and work, but in terms of the tax incentives, I have been listening to a lot of production companies nationally and internationally. And tax incentives might not be the draw that they were at one point because of the issues that have to be handled in advance of that. Have you been listening to that too? Are you aware of that too?
Oh, absolutely. But I would differ. We feel like the tax incentive is just as important as ever. That doesn't take away from some of the built-in advantages that we have in Hollywood, though. We have seen with the COVID crisis, other states have wanted to step up their incentive game in a way to try and attract production away from Hollywood because they perceived Los Angeles to maybe be slower in reopening. You might recall Georgia and Florida had opened
right
up
away.
Right away. And that was an attempt to draw those productions, I think, from Los Angeles. I don't think it was successful for a couple of reasons. One, folks are very concerned about traveling and traveling their crews. And there's a huge liability element there, of course. And that's for a larger discussion industry-wide as well. But the talent remains here. The best folks that work in the industry are here. And we learn from the people in the industry that we've been in touch with every day since COVID hit that there's much more comfort with the safety level and safety of the industry here in Hollywood than there is in some of the other states that haven't been a part of the industry for as long as we have.
Okay, so let's talk about opening, because as of June 12th, production is possible with all kinds of rules, restrictions, cautions, thoughts that have to go into it. So what is safe way forward? I mean, that's kind of, everything has its,
Sure.
its name these days. So safe way forward is basically what the state is telling any kind of production. So what are the parameters that a production could actually get rocking again?
So one of the things about the entertainment industry that we witnessed in the past 3 months, I don't know, Maria, if there may be an industry that has been as involved in the entertainment industry. I just may not know about it because it's an area where I work. I'm familiar with what entertainment has done. But the entertainment industry has been so involved, right up there with the construction industry, frankly, that's been quite successful working in Southern California through COVID. The entertainment industry, with all of the guilds and unions, the MPAA, the AMPTP, that represent the studios, they all came together in a significant coalition and came up with their industry white paper. The industry white paper is what the state adopted and moved forward when the governor issued the path forward for the entertainment industry, county by county, of course, in the state of California. It is very detailed. It covers everything from testing on site. There is going to be a required safety compliance officer that has been trained and certified that is required as well. There are all kinds of new provisions regarding spacing, obviously crowd scenes. Much of that will be done virtually online with what you can do with computer technology now. And there will be definite interest in shooting outside, safer to be outside a bit, or in a large soundstage environment. Less of a focus early on until we see more progress in the COVID crisis, I think, for on-location filming. Some of it will have to be done, but that's something that I think is going to be a slower entrance back into the industry. We also will see very interesting elements of audiences. This industry white paper includes the use of animals on sets. The one thing that's interesting, a couple of things that have been kind of left out of the white paper to deal with on a production by production basis as long as the primary elements of safety are met, and that's makeup artists and hairstylists. Exactly. Because of the close personal contact that they have to have. And then naturally, any scenes like sports where you have close physical contact,
kissing,
fighting scenes, any kissing scenes, things like that. There's going to be I would say that that's going to be an attempt to move away from that. There will be an attempt to stay away from that, I should say, for the time being. If it is absolutely required in a script, what you could see done is the approach to the scene, but then the camera cuts away. So they leave you for your imagination as to what what might happen next, and you don't actually see the physical contact yet in a way that you saw it before.
The responsible party, I mean, you mentioned the safety officer. Every set has somebody on set who is responsible for making sure that the safety of the crew and the cast is in place. But this is a completely different human. This has to be someone with some sort of medical expertise, I imagine.
So, well, there's a certification process. Some of them, I expect some of them will have CERT background, EMT background maybe. One of the things that the entertainment industry and the guilds, unions, MPA, the coalition I talked about earlier, they worked with a significant number of experts really that were from all over the country on developing their industry white paper. Many of them had their own consultants. The DGA had their consultant. IATSE had their consultant, the studios had their consultant. So there were experts that really worked together in putting the white paper out and issuing it. But certainly the folks that are the safety compliance officers will have to meet the standards that are set forth in there.
And then there also has to be the willingness to participate.
Yes.
Because I'm sure that despite all of these safety issues, there's still the personal choice of whether you want to be on a set with other people, whether the actors want to engage in that kind of participation. I know that a lot of them just don't want to go.
And that will be their choice. There are two big issues here as well for large production to start. I do know that for the city of Los Angeles, our first permitted production that's on location is a commercial that we'll be shooting on Friday, June 19th. So 1 week after the release of the industry to work again occurred. But two significant issues on production. One of them, as you just pointed out, is the actors, the talent, being willing to work. And imagine what happens to a set if one of them ends up testing positive in any environment, not just in the work environment, but in some other environment, what that does to a set. So that's causing, there's consideration about quarantining a crew and a set during a show. To keep the set as safe as possible. Hotel rooms, all kinds of facilities like that where you can keep folks quarantined. That's something that is being considered. The other issue, which is a significant issue, is the insurance issue.
Absolutely.
The insurance issue is, while there has been progress made in conversations that have occurred, the insurance issue has not yet been satisfied. There are a couple of elements of that. There's what will the industry itself be able to do with the insurance market? And secondly, will there be assistance that will come from the United States Congress by way of legislation? And we'll see.
Would the city ever step in for insurance issues like that? I mean, do you have any say in the game? Is there anywhere there that you can support the industry at large by negotiating the same way you did with, other vendors to negotiate with insurance companies?
It's possible. It hasn't occurred yet. We're certainly involved daily in the discussions, and one of the mayor's senior advisors, the mayor's senior advisor for the entertainment industry is, for outside the industry, not inside City Hall, has been very involved in these discussions every day and is kind of a leader in solving those kinds of problems. And so I see the city being of assistance where we can be, but right now we really are seeing first what the market will do and what we may be able to get out of Congress.
There's no way you can predict the future, and I'm not even asking you to, but just from your point of view, how do you see this slowly rolling out? You said the first film
on location shot.
Right, exactly, from Film LA was do you
will
see
be
it
shot
rolling?
Friday,
yeah, do you see it rolling out exterior-based commercial infomercials that sort of semi-roll into shiny floor shows to how do you see this kind of rolling out? I don't see any sort of blockbusters happening in the near future, but
we'll see. My guess, again, it's a guess, but it's an educated guess.
Right.
Our first permit is for a commercial. We expect commercials for on location to be the first ones to roll out for a number of reasons. One, they're smaller,
right.
Easier to contain, smaller footprint. Another element that I would see, shows that are easily done with a small crew on a large soundstage, cooking shows that have just very few operators, one host and maybe one guest. They can easily stay separated. And some of the reality shows and game shows are also working. What their interest is their audience.
Right.
And what do they do with their audience? And so there are plans in place for spacing those audiences, and maybe they are able to increase the volume of the audience. Maybe you don't see the audience as often, but you hear them. So I would expect some of those productions to start fairly soon. I think you're right. The bigger challenges are going to be the larger productions with larger budgets that have larger risk.
I had heard that pre-production is going to be king here because you need to know what you're walking into. You can't make fast adaptations on the set that day. Everything already has to be completely set. Well, this is only a fraction of your world.
True.
I mean, with Public Works, obviously it coordinates with the film industry very strongly, but you also have to deal with a lot of things just in general with the city. And with COVID, you have had to make some pretty I would imagine substantive changes within the Public Works. So what were some of the highlights there and how have you adapted?
One of the largest highlights, Maria, is just the fact that we were able to continue our Public Works services through COVID really without interruption. We maybe had 2 or 3 trash routes. That's among all the routes in the city that had to be rescheduled in the first couple of days for trash pickup. But we stabilized very quickly. The other thing, we've also had the opportunity, and we've taken the opportunity through creative leadership in the Department of Public Works, through our bureau directors and general managers. For example, Streets LA, our Street Services Bureau, they've got the ADAPT program. When they immediately saw the significant reduction in traffic that occurred because people weren't on the roads as much, of course, that opened the opportunity for the city to step in and repair the arterials. Those are the larger roads, not the local roads, but those that are more widely traveled, the larger boulevards and such. And that enabled us to, because they're very difficult as far as interruption when you have to repair those roads. So
No one's there.
even though we had them on various schedules, we're able to accelerate them because no one's on them. And so that was a significant program too. By the way, that's also something that we have worked with our Department of Transportation and the entertainment industry in collaboration on how those roads are imagined going forward. So that's an opportunity that we had. One of the problems that we saw was immediately once COVID hit, some of our recycling facilities closed down because of closeness and proximity of workers, very important for their safety. So we had a period of time, now we have gotten through that. June 1, we got to the point where we were no longer, so we basically had it for about 6 weeks. Some material was landfilled, recyclable material was landfilled because there was nowhere else for it to go. One of the interesting questions that we would get is, if, even from the press, if some of this material is now being landfilled, why are we still telling people to put it in their blue bin? Why not just have them put it in the trash? And it's because the answer was, we never want people, it's taken years, decades,
habits.
to train people in habits. And once we've got people in those habits, we don't want to move them for something that we knew would be temporary. Now, the good news was that by June 1, the MRFs were able to reopen, for the ones that weren't, we were able to redirect the recyclables to other areas. So now we're not landfilling the recyclables again as of June 1.
Are you worried that the recyclable bins are going to fill even more than they did? Because now we have actually gone back in terms of disposable items that we're using more. I mean, water bottles,
No doubt.
plastic trash bags at the grocery store. I mean, we've sort of now created we have moved backwards in regards to what we had been doing.
So there are more single-use items
Yeah.
on safety grounds. So we'll see how long that lasts. We will see an increase. We are seeing an increase. Interestingly enough, you remind me of something else we were able to do as a result of COVID. People were staying home more. They're not in their offices. They're in their homes. So trash that they generate increases naturally. Plus, their kids are home. The whole family's there. And so what we did with sanitation is we let people know, if you have additional trash, leave it out there on the side and we will pick it up same trash day. So for free. So that's something that we were able to do as well, and we've continued to be able to do that. So just another example of what Public Works has been able to do. We also have the opportunity now of rethinking our alfresco dining and dining outdoors, of course, and what we use our street space and sidewalk space, I should say, for outdoor dining. And we're also working to find a way to include our street vending community as well in some of those common spaces so that we have the full cultural and foodie experience that's so special in Los Angeles, maybe expanding now as we look at how we restructure it.
I had the opportunity to speak with city planning, and one of the things that they obviously permit is the alfresco dining. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's something that's going to last past the crisis?
I do.
Because we have the weather and we have the environment that naturally,
And I would add one more thing. I think the weather and the environment are significant, but something if you talk to restaurant owners that they'll say before was, look, we are a dense city, particularly in specific areas, and the permitting process can be challenging. And what we're learning new ways is right now with COVID is expediting these permits and taking down some of the barriers that had long existed just because it was institutional sometimes. And we're rethinking that process with planning, with street services, with engineering. So I think once you make it easier for these restaurants, they'll be much more interested in it because it also makes it more affordable for them.
It is fascinating how fast government has seen its ability to move in this crisis. So I seriously doubt anyone's going to tolerate any movement backward in that regard and making everything move slower.
We will see. We'll certainly hear from them if it's attempted.
Lots of projects, lots of hats, but one of the newest hats is the Office of Petroleum and...
Well, it's the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety.
Okay.
So, long acronym. It's our petroleum regulation office, really. And I think it's more of an energy office. It just has the name petroleum currently. But this has been an office that's been long coming in the city of Los Angeles. It actually existed some 30 years ago after the Aliso Canyon gas leak. That's a really call to action on creating and building this office. So it was created and built within the Board of Public Works. It's very important to finally give neighborhoods and communities a place in city government where they can go to with these environmental health issues that relate to our communities, and something that wasn't focused on and not much attention paid to it for a very long time. And so with technology and with so much more that we know about a safe environment, we really have a lot of work to do in this area, but it's something that we are very proud that we have started. We've built the office up. We have more work to do. Actually, our first petroleum administrator has done such a great job. The governor picked him up to be head of CalGEM, which is the same level at the whole state. So, we're proud of the work that we've done so far, but we have a very long way to go. But it is first a way in the city of Los Angeles to start to restore some of the environmental justice to our communities that have long been in need of it.
So, along with the industry and with the crisis within, the pandemic, you also had an interesting experience with the protests that called your department into action, because at the beginning of the protest there was a certain exceptional element to it, which was not necessarily part of the protest but was destructive with graffiti. Right. And how did your office deal with that right off the bat? So
in two areas, or three. Graffiti, as you mentioned, and then when people protest, even the most peaceful protests, it's amazing how clean some of the protests have been with debris that's left behind. But even the most peaceful protests, people drop things on the ground, there's destruction. So with trash pickup, with graffiti removal, and after some of the destruction that happened to some of the businesses, our teams were out helping businesses clean up from glass and other items that had been destroyed in some of the very unfortunate looting that we saw happen in our city. So regarding graffiti, we called our graffiti crews, at least put them on notice that we're going to be calling them in very quickly in significant numbers in anticipation based upon what we had seen in some of the first early protests before the larger ones. So when the larger protests hit on that first Friday night downtown, and then that first Saturday night at the Fairfax Melrose area, the first Saturday morning, we got up early. We came downtown with a couple of our general managers, and we were able to put 25 graffiti crews in downtown that first day. The second day, we had upwards of over 40 crews. I think the number was 42. So our folks were on call, and they were ready to serve, and we continue to get compliments from communities and from the business community regarding how quickly some of the graffiti was removed. Two other areas, and we do this to this very day. I get the report every morning,
okay.
And I got one this morning. Wherever there are protests, we have our street sweepers and our street services crews that are there immediately after the protest to clean up after the protest. Like I said, the numbers, the data has gotten better as the protests have been more peaceful and there's less debris to clean up. But we still want our city restored to its pre-protest condition after a protest. And then, of course, much more significantly, the amount of material that street services and sanitation had to pick up as a result of some of the destruction that occurred both downtown, really four places: downtown Hollywood, Van Nuys, Fairfax, Melrose. And that really required street services and our sanitation crews. And just the first morning that I was out early walking the area after the protests had ended and the sun comes back up, Fairfax, Melrose on Sunday, downtown on Saturday, was seeing our crews helping the businesses really pick up the pieces. And by the way, we've had great partners. There's another huge element that COVID has created, and that's a large volunteer database. So many people have stepped up, Maria. Companies have offered their services for graffiti removal. Our painters union here is working with the carpenters. Their idea, they stepped up to walk in to help businesses as volunteers pick up the debris, repaint their business, get rid of the glass. All this assistance from volunteers that have just stepped up, and labor, the LA County Fed have led on just numerous food drives, serving tens of thousands of people. I mean, the volunteer effort that we've seen come through our office that just created itself organically has been a wonderful thing to see in our city.
Speaking of things to see, you've been in office now since 2013, am I correct?
7 years and 2 weeks.
There you go. Prior to that, you were known as a pretty outspoken, radio commentator, and you had some pretty strong opinions about things, and now you've worked within this system for this period of time. What did you not anticipate? What have you learned? How was your mindset adjusted from being the guy on the outside commenting to the guy on the inside working with it?
So it's interesting, what have I not anticipated versus what have I learned? I think there are a couple of different things. Regarding something that I did not anticipate was just how complicated procurement is. Oh. And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure that it was really water cooler talk in the private sector much on procurement issues until COVID hit and people started recognizing procuring PPE.
Right.
And you read the stories now still that exist. Particularly government procurement is a complicated process. And it's a very important process. We have worked very hard, not just on procurement issues through public works. Obviously, we're a significant procurement department, but contracting too. Now, contracting, I did anticipate. And the challenges around contracting, the successes that we can have, we've worked really hard to increase contracting opportunities and contracting success for minority business enterprises, women-owned business enterprises, disabled veteran, small businesses, really across the board. That I anticipated and expected, but just the procurement aspect I didn't. One of the things that frustrates me that I sometimes hear in the press is when people criticize our city employees, and I know that we're the city government, so that's where people go to complain, and we're happy to be able to solve some of those problems. We have 50,000 employees almost in the city of Los Angeles. When a story shows that somebody's taken a city employee on their cell phone and they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, that's a problem. I understand that, but it frustrates me when it paints a negative brush on the amazing city employees that we have. And one final thing, that there is real justification. As somebody who was a critic of government process in the past, and by the way, that's not entirely a difficult thing to do.
No.
But to be a critic of that. But there's a purpose for our government process. We are spending the public's money. And when you're spending the public's money to do good and to improve the lives of Angelenos, there are a lot of stakeholders that have the right to be at the table and in that discussion.
And that's a wrap on this edition of LA Currents.